Let's talk a lot about syslog. We're going to talk about the advantages of it, remote logging, how it works, preparing remote administration or remote logging. I'm actually going to do a little bit of configuration there. And then I'm going to give you one little secret that I came up with in event logging that can help you to protect yourself against adversaries out there. Okay, so what is syslog? Well, it's logging for Unix and Linux operating systems. It does one thing that Windows didn't do up until 2008 or 2012, which is local logging and remote log collection at the same time. You can send your events through UDP or TCP port 514 to a remote machine, so you can get the logs off the machine. That's very important when it comes to presenting your material in a court of law, to have that ability to remove it from the local machine. It allows the system administrator to collect and distribute auditing data from a single point of management, which is really elegant. This is controlled on a per machine basis in the etsyslog.conf file. The primary advantage of syslogging is that all reported messages are collected in a message file locally and can be pushed remotely. When we talk about remote management, centralized log collection makes it simpler day to day for maintenance and incident response. We can correlate that here and look at it in one terminal. We don't have to go to individual workstations and review those events. Now, on the Windows side, in defense of Windows, there are actually plenty of tools prior to 2008 that worked all the way back in NT4 that would allow you to go in and automate the pulling of those event logs on the local machine. You would put an agent resident, and then that agent would then pull this back. There's a company, there are tools called Logcaster that allowed you to do this all the way back in 1998, 1999, that time frame. So this has been around for, with extra third-party add-ins for Windows, but for syslog, it's been around since it started. So it has been, it's much more well known as a robust mechanism. You're going to get good auditing. You're going to get secure log storage. You're also going to be able to get those events off the machine so that if an adversary does go to that machine and says, oh, look, a clear text log file, I think I'll go in there and I'll rip that log file apart. Well, they may be doing it there when they have command and control of that machine, but what we've done is we've gone in and we've pulled events to a remote location. When you do log replication, you need to get a second set of copies, and you need to verify that those copies are consistent with the original through good syslogging mechanisms. When you prepare for remote logging, you've got to set up that centralized server to perform the logging task only. And here's the thing, it's going to need lots and lots of drive space. It's going to have to be very organized, and it's going to have to be very well protected. You want to, if you're designing an event logging system, you actually want to put a physical firewall in front of it to protect it. Or what you can do is what I do with my clients. Later on in a little while, we're going to talk about intrusion detection systems, and one in particular is called Snort. What I've actually done is set up 2 machines on a network that are Snort boxes for intrusion detection and logging at the same time. And here's what happens. Normally in remote logging, I say, hey, I'm a server and I want to report into the syslogging server there. So I say IP address and UDP port 514 on your machine. And the adversary comes and attacks me and corrupts this machine and looks and says, the syslogging on this server is configured so that the centralized logging mechanism is there. I've got command and control over this machine. Now I'm going to attack that machine, and I'm going to go grab the logs from that machine. It may only be the last set of logs, and you may be pulling logs off, but if I attack you now, I can grab that information, I can corrupt that machine, and go back to what I was doing here. Okay, well, how does intrusion detection fit into this? Well, what I can do is I can set up 2 intrusion detection machines, and I can say to those intrusion detection machines, you don't have an IP address, but you're listening to all network traffic. We're putting it in promiscuous mode. And we create a rule on the Snort boxes that says only listen for this IP address and this port. They're actually syslogging servers. So normally I'd be saying you are addressable for an IP address. and I will go to your IP address. These don't have IP addresses, but what they're doing is they're listening for that communication that's supposed to be going to you. Now, erase the logging server there, but realize that I, as the server that I'm giving my events away, I'm saying here to this IP address. The snort boxes are saying, hey, that's to this a particular IP address. I'll take a copy of those packets and I'll put it locally. Now the adversary comes in and attacks me and says, I'm going to go after the IP address of the syslog server. I've already gained command and control here, and I say here, and I'm offering up my events out there, and the attacker says, I'm going to go after, you don't have that IP address. We haven't given it to you. It's not assigned to any particular box, and they're going after something that doesn't exist, and they can't get to the two snort boxes with syslog on them. Now, what's even better than this, from a logging standpoint for an organization, when you set up Snort to do this very thing, is you've got two different devices on a network collecting your logs. When you now go to court and you say, these are my centralized logging servers, they are independent from each other, and the events that are being generated by my network out here, including this machine right here, are being collected by these two devices independent of each other, and they are perfectly matched. That's very elegant in a court of law to get that data to each one of those machines. This is something that I did. If anybody else says that I came up with this very early in 1996 when I was at a security conference talking about using Snort for something other than intrusion detection, using as a syslog mechanism. So if anybody says any different, tell them to come talk to me. So we want to prepare for remote logging, and we want to have a nice, strong, robust environment. How do you configure for remote logging when it comes to syslog? Well, you run the syslog-d with the R, which is the centralized logging server, and that's going to receive communications on TCP or UDP. It used to be that we would always say UDP port 514, but there's also the capability now to do it on TCP. So syslogging will work over TCP. You can look in the RFC. You're going to change on that centralized logging server, you're going to change 3 files here, init.d syslog, sysconfig syslog, and the services. The reference should appear in the var log messages to tell you that it actually worked. And then the syslog can be added to the etsy syslog.conf on the client side. In other words, you've got to point your clients to talk to that. So you repoint the clients to point to that particular server. Now you're going to have to do correlation, and we'll talk about that next.